Hello, and welcome to another video about art, actually. And this time I've actually finished a sketchbook. At least I think I have. This one was finished late last year, and I thought you might like to see what's in it, and you can see the progression of some of my work, actually, because it starts out a bit one way and then goes a bit the other. So, that happens with art, and that's why another reason I love sketchbooks, because I can just shut the sketchbook and I don't have to look at that page, or I can look at that page. It is entirely up to me. Whereas when it's framed and put on the wall, that's it. You're pretty much committed. This is a mixed media sketchbook because, of course, you probably realise by now I'm a mixed media artist, and it's just a cheapie that I bought in a store in Germany. It's an Art Space one, which is Upcrate brand. So if you're actually anywhere in the European Union, you can get them. And they're about €25 for 5 sketchbooks, and they're fabulous paper. I really love them. So let us get started. I don't know why I chose elephants and coloured pencil. It was just something. Well, actually, it's mixed media because I don't know. It's usually I really tend to sketch what's outside of my window or around me here in Germany or Britain, where we lived for 9 years as well. So this one is not either of those things, but it's still mixed media, and sometimes I just try new things. So this was Ecoline pens and coloured pencil, a little bit of marker. And I quite like the way it turned out because it's different. What I like especially is that dirty sky. I really enjoyed doing that. And yeah, it's a mixture of all sorts of things, as you would imagine. This is real weirdness. I don't know why I thought that the bottom of the sea would be fun to sketch. It was one of those nights where I sat down to sketch and I didn't know what to sketch, but I knew I wanted to do something. So I thought, you know what, how about something really odd? So I put this together from a whole heap of different online images, Pixabay and things like that. Just get a whole heap of them because they're royalty free. So you can have a look at those, put them all together. So this doesn't exist anywhere, only in my sketchbook. However, now it's business as usual. This is my usual style. And love kingfishers, love kookaburras, love all sorts of the kingfisher family, mixed media. And again, I was really surprised with these two because the background is the same on both, and it's Ecoline liquid watercolour, but it behaved so much differently on this side of the paper than it did on this. So that led to me to understand that the back of this paper behaves differently to the front. It's still good. You can still get an effect. I don't love this effect. I think it looks a bit overworked compared to this one. But, you do what you do. So that eye needs a little bit more work. So maybe this book's not finished. Love this one. That's one of my favourites. And actually that became the bird of the month for my Patreon. So there's a full-length tutorial on that one up in Patreon. Actually, it's not this one, but one very similar. When we get to it, I'll show you. Again, everything takes my fancy, so I just paint and sketch. This one is a seaside village from Britain, and just all sorts of stuff. And it takes me about an evening, sometimes 2 evenings, to do a picture like that. And again, that's my usual style, so no surprises. Another pigeon, because I love birds and I love painting birds and sketching them. So again, mixed media. Started out with gouache, the Ecoline liquid watercolor. Again, I had given up by this point of trying to do it on this side because it doesn't work as well. So I thought, right, the birds will be going on the recto page, the verso page will be other things. Here again. This is one of the birds of the month. There is a full tutorial for this one on my Patreon as well. So the other one was the practice. This was the real deal. Love this one. And you'll see it quite a lot in my materials wherever you look on Facebook and Instagram, places like that. Also Pinterest, but the full real-time tutorial for this one is on my Patreon. This one, again, just an imaginary sort of street with some houses from Britain. And what I do in these as a rule is just pick houses out from about a dozen different photos and put them together. Because that means it's unique and it's not copying it from anybody else. I can't accidentally copy somebody else. So yeah, that works for me. Another one here, little house. That's one we took ourselves actually when we lived in Britain. My barn owls, they always tend to look depressed. So he's not depressed, I promise you. With the background here, again, Ecoline liquid watercolour, and I have a tutorial on liquid watercolours and how they behave with different other mixed media materials. So, and that one's on my Patreon as well. It's a full-length thing. It's about an hour long I put them through their paces a lot. But as you can see from where I started out here of just random splotches and letting it do what it wanted to do, here I was trying to control it a little bit and see what would happen if I made something that was supposed to look like dappled leaves through the sunny trees and things like that. So you can actually do quite a lot, and I love it. This is a colour I've mixed myself, this green. It doesn't exist in the watercolours, but all of that's in the tutorial. So it's a lovely rich green. Again, just very, very simple. I don't love this one. It looks to me as though I could have done better, like along these places and so forth. I usually put much more attention to detail. But I also remember that this was another one of those nights where I really wasn't in the mood. But when I told myself, well, go somewhere else in the house and do something else, I didn't want to. I wanted to sketch. So I put marks on paper. Then back to my peacocks. I like him. I've always wanted to paint one of those, and here, this is it. So yeah, mixed media is fabulous for birds. And here again, tried to get some light going in the trees there, which works particularly well with those watercolours. This was, I think I had some new coloured pencils. This was when the new Inktense pencil range came out. And I bought the colours and I wanted to try them with what I had already. So yeah, that one, a cuckoo. I had offered my Patreons the choice of either a cuckoo or a swallow for their bird of the month. And in August, must have been August because I've stamped it as August. And they chose the swallow. So we might do the cuckoo this year, and so that he still gets his look in. But here again, the leaves are a little bit more leafy, and I really like this guy. I love grey and brown on birds, actually. You'd think, well, they're really quite dull compared to the peacock and things like that, but actually it's how they are, and they look really nice. And I find it easier to sketch brown birds sometimes because the browns go together well. They also photograph quite well, so that's good. This one was a sketch. I can't remember what this one was about, but I think this was some sort of online challenge from memory. And yeah, enjoyed doing all those textures. This here is using a resist technique that I've pioneered myself. There's quite a few art techniques actually that I pioneer myself, and the full tutorial, as you might have guessed, is on my Patreon. Because it's really good for filling large areas of colour and things like that. So yeah, it's a nice way to sketch. Couple more birds. I tried to introduce a little bit of gouache into the background here. I think that's because of the look of it. I have spilt something on here and needed to cover it up. And I love painting the linnets. These birds are linnets. I love painting those. But yeah, I'm not in love with that. Might come back and fiddle with it more and usually ruin it completely. All liquid watercolour, a little bit of gouache, coloured pencil. Absolutely adore this. It's Cambridge. And yeah, nice, actually. Really, it was a nice cruisy sketch that came together beautifully, and I'm glad I gave it a double page. And here is one in Germany from the end of our street. These houses are all around us and so forth. Same details. Liquid watercolour. And again, this was all around the time I suspect that I did the liquid watercolour tutorial on my Patreon so that I could show people how to use it, and a few other layering techniques and bits and pieces. But mixed media, coloured pencils over the top of the liquid watercolour work particularly well. And yeah, it's nice and loose. This is one of my few public buildings. I tend to, when you paint a building, it's got to look like a building, and it's got to look like the building that you're setting out to make. And I find that incredibly intimidating. I mean, okay, let me qualify that. It doesn't have to look exactly like it, but In my mind, and it's just my opinion, so, please take with a grain of salt. In my opinion, if you go out to paint a public building, it should be recognisable. That's just me. And this is the planetarium in Hamburg, which is the capital city quite near, or capital. It's a city quite near where we live. And yeah, it does in fact look like that. Again, I'm quite happy with this. I love the liquid watercolor for these summery trees, and it's a medium that I use a lot for depicting summer things. And then gouache and colored pencil, fine liners, bit of acrylic marker, and so forth like that. Yeah, so it does look recognizable. I know some people don't really care. I tend to. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think if you paint a tree, it just has to look like a tree. It doesn't have to look like any particular tree. But with public buildings, I think, it's helpful if they are recognizable. Let me know if you agree in the comments. A couple of little seascapes. Again, this was an evening where I was so uninspired. I dropped a pencil on it. That's normal for me. Yeah, just practicing, just making sure that I put something on paper, because daily art practice is really important, and it's very important to me. It's how I keep myself sane, but it's also how I keep in practice, is just keep doing it, because when you're doing it all the time, it becomes easier. This one is a autumny picture of the moors near us. We're in a national park here, and it's all heathland. Again, I love this retro looking sky, which I did with my Ecoline brush markers and gouache over the top and coloured pencil over the top of that. And yeah, it feels windy and cold. Indeed it was too. I did this from a photo I took myself. Most of these are either made up photos, as I said, from about 6 photos, or I've taken them myself, and sometimes I just imagine it, because I've been there enough times, I can imagine it, so I do that. This one, my cousins went to Sweden for their summer holidays, as a lot of Germans do. Germans either fly south to Spain or fly north to Scandinavia, and my lot went with their caravan, and I painted some of the pictures that they took. Again, same dirty sky with gouache and Ecoline marker. Like doing these trees, they work particularly well. A few resist techniques here and there, and lots of texture in the front. And this one, I don't like drawing people. I really don't. I don't consider myself to be brilliant at it. I'm certainly not anywhere near as good as the artists that I admire. However, sometimes it's important to push out the old comfort zone boundaries a bit and try to step over them, and I did. I thought, well, I won't just paint one person, I'll paint lots, because then you don't take so much notice of that one person. This is a marketplace from England, and I really enjoyed painting the tents, and I love painting shadows, especially, sunny and shadows. Liquid watercolor and watercolor pencil, and sorry, not watercolor pencil, that was actually Derwent drawing pencil. And my dirty sky again, exactly the same deal. Gouache and Ecoline markers, various layers on the buildings. And with the people, I used an Ecoline marker. I think it was a warm grey, and I drew people shapes. And then I put the details in, which meant that if they were further off in the distance, I didn't have to do quite so much of that. But where they were up a bit closer, I could use my acrylic markers to give some details, or coloured pencils. You see blue appears a lot because people wear a lot of denim. So I thought, well, that's a pretty good shout. And yeah, so it was interesting. I don't do a lot of it because I said I don't enjoy it. I don't really, it's not my thing at all. But it's nice to be able to do it. This one is one of my favourites, and this one was painted for the Landscape Art Club on Instagram, and it was the first weekly challenge somewhere in France. I can't remember where. And I was really pleased with it, actually, because I used a lot of neo colours in this, and a lot of the resist technique that, again, like I said, you'll see on my Patreon. these trees and the lavender are all made with this very, very simple resist technique, and you only need 2 things to do it with, which is super, super nice, and this is the results you can get from it. So I really enjoyed that. I did a second one because the lady who runs it usually does a half a dozen photos, or 3 or 4, and I liked the second one, so I did another one. This here is, again, another one of my own techniques, and it's called soft graffito, and I use Derwent Inktense pencils for this. And again, there's a full tutorial, you can have a look, so don't take up too much time here. Resist, Neocolor, soft graffito, that dirty sky, and I went in a little bit more with gouache this time because the photo was a little bit it was going to rain. So I thought, well, we can show that. So that was nice. And I don't use a lot of purple in my work, but I love the way this pops. This one was one of my sort of conglomerate imagined ones. So a church from one picture that we took when we lived there, and then some other bits and bobs. And this sky is just amazing to paint. It's so easy and it really works well. Here, liquid watercolor. I was starting to bring the liquid watercolor in here to create a frame for the picture, which really brings the church up front and center. Not in love with this brick wall. I think that could have been done better. So, and probably have done so in the past. And a bit of acrylic marker here to get some foreground interest. So that works. And I push this back into the background with pan pastel. So that sort of works to give it a little bit of distance. Oh, I haven't finished this sketchbook. There's a fresh page in here, so that's going to get used. I use every inch of them, actually. Pheasant, because it was that time of year and I was in a pheasanty mood, so I thought, well, we can try this. I started with the same liquid watercolour that I've used on the others, but I went over the top with some coloured pencil because I wanted actual grass texture this time, not up in the trees quite as much. And then owls. Okay, these owls look remarkably similar to that owl, but they're not. They're just simply me practicing owls. This owl is the one that I said I would point out to you when we got to that bit. This was the owl of the month on my Patreon, and there is a full tutorial on how I sketched him. Very popular tutorial, actually, and works well considering it's so damn easy to get such a good effect. It's I feel a little bit sort of, not exactly criminal, but slightly sneaky, saying that, you know, look how it works out, because it's actually a lot of scribbling. And it's the trick with these birds is to know where to put the scribbles, that's all. And so we're dropping some paint onto the background and we're slapping some more over here, and you will be astounded if you watch the tutorial how rough it is. And then scribble over the top of it, and you get an owl. So yeah, that's my another bird of the month on my Patreon. So lucky last is nothing. So I've got 2 pages in this book. They're going to get used, so I might show you what I've done in the future. Otherwise you can see it on my Instagram. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, this is an Upcrate sketchbook, so if you are anywhere in the Eurozone, they'll ship all over Europe. I dare say they'll ship to Britain as well, because there's a few people who get the Upcrate box. They have a monthly box there. It's kind of a mystery art box, and I got it for a little while actually. It's quite nice. But their sketchbooks are lovely, and they're not expensive at all, which is not something we can say about all art materials. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy that and become inspired in some way. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Bye.